Dear participants, dear colleagues, it's a pleasure to welcome you to this event at the European Parliament on the ensuring integrity of the European Parliament elections 2024 through the participation of civil society.
Some challenges that we haven't fixed so far. And I will refer basically to three. One, the fact that European elections are too contaminated in a way by the national political circumstances and by the national debates. The second challenge is the lack of visibility of European political parties. The third one is also the lack of proper visibility and understanding and interiorization by the voters of the so-called Spitzenkandidaten process. So we have these three issues, and then we can add the question of participation, the question of the turnout. This is something that has had a descending line. We can try to provide a solution for these three, maybe also the fourth problem, which is to set up a pan-European electoral constituency. We propose this constituency, which is to be added to the national constituencies, the current ones, made up of 28 candidates. And of course, these candidates have to be presented in a list by the European political parties. And it is only natural to expect that the number one person in this second ballot, this additional ballot, will be the candidate for President of the Commission of the respective European political party. Second, the European political parties will be visible because obviously their names and logos will be by nature or by default the ones featuring in the ballots, as it is only normal. And third, we make more visible and realistic the Spitzenkandidaten process because we have the candidates on top of the list. As Sandro Gozzi always say, you cannot have a Spitzenkandidaten if there is no list, because a Spitzenkandidat means top of the list, no?
No list, no head of the list.
No list, no head of the list, no?
I think we have to realize on the beginning the members of the European Parliament represent more citizens than the US Congress or the US Senate. We have more voters at the election 2024 as Northern America has inhabitants. So we are representing the only one multinational parliament in the world with direct elected members and with legislative power. That is unique. The vote for members of the European Parliament next year is a decision in which direction the European Union will go in the next 5 years. Law is broken, values are violated, trust is lost, freedom of speech is restricted in some member states of the European Union. Parliaments are silenced through emergency powers. I think we all agree we cannot take peace, freedom, and our liberal democracy for granted. The ethical, moral progress of the last decades is not a law of nature. What one generation has achieved can get lost by the next. We have many examples in these days. Therefore, we must do everything to strengthen these, our achievements. For this, we need above all three things. First, a common understanding about liberal parliamentary democracy. Second, the political will to implement this commitment in our daily work. And third, accompanying support from the civil society. To unite these objectives, I have recently launched the initiative to develop a charter on the role of parliaments in a functioning liberal democracy. About a common understanding, the fundamental principles and the key ingredients of modern parliamentarism. Just last week, I have presented 7 fundamental principles of liberal parliamentary democracy at the high-level Global Parliamentarism Conference in León in Spain. Before the European elections 2024, all the parliaments of the European Union want to further develop and adopt this common charter latest in April next year, before the election on the 21st of April in Madrid. But it is not enough. We also need civil society action. The EU is all of us. We are all jointly responsible for our common future. Therefore, your project, supported by the EU budget, is so important.
It is clear that what we have to do in this historical phase is 3 things concerning democracy. The first thing is to develop European democracy. And to develop European democracy, we have tabled several proposals. You have just listened to one, the most important one, I would say, on the electoral law. The second is to mobilize around the democratic processes in Europe, and notably around the European elections. And to mobilize, we need several instruments. And one of the answers to mobilize is also our proposal on political advertising and our proposals to increase the transparency of the political and democratic processes across the continent, not only at the European elections, because our regulation will apply to all the different elections. The third word is protect. We need to protect our democracies, because our democracies today are under attack, are under threat. And these are the 3 main reasons behind our proposal to introduce for the first time in Europe some common rules on political advertising. It's clear that this is also linked to a paradox. We talk about European Parliament, we talk about European democracy, we talk about European elections, but you cannot do European and transnational campaigns. Because you got, not only for political reasons, and not only because you got 27 separate, sometimes too separated, political spaces. And our proposal for the transnational list, for example, is one of the answers to put down these walls of national politics. But also because for the rules, if you are a candidate and you want to promote, or if you are a member of European political party, I had the honor to be the secretary of one European political party, and you want to develop, to sign a contract to promote campaigns across the 27 countries, so you can't. You have to do 27 different contracts. Political advertising proposal is based on 2 pillars. On one side, you got the democracy package pillar, the democracy action plan. And on the other side, you got the digital services sector. These are 2 horizontal political and legislative initiative bases. On this basis, we have inserted a new vertical regulation, a new vertical proposals, which is political advertising, which wants to answer to both challenges. Building a truly digital single market for online political advertising, but also for offline political advertising, introducing rules which mobilize better, ensure more transparency, and protect our democracies.
I would start with one of the most important complicated matter for us, so how to make young people protagonists in the electoral process. I have to say that as a political group, I'm a representative of the Greens EFA, we try a lot to improve new tools to engage with young people, with digital, for example, and communication tools and events focused on areas where young people can be attracted or interested. There is a lot to do, for example, with the digital platforms and social media, providing them with relevant and engaging content on the electoral process. Then we need to encourage parties and candidates to address youth-specific European concerns and interests during their campaigns that can help create a sense of relevance and involvement among young voters. By implementing these strategies, the European Parliament can enhance youth engagement and promote their active participation in the democratic process. It is no secret that young people have historically been underrepresented in elections, often feeling disillusioned and disconnected from the political sphere. However, it is essential that we recognize the immense potential they hold and the unique perspectives they bring to the table. It is our duty as European Union elected representatives to make the participation on the European Union election easier for 11 million mobile EU citizens residing in a member state of which they are not national to vote and to stand as a candidate under the same condition.
We said that European politics takes place here in this House, and we had MEPs taking the floor today, but it doesn't start here. It starts very far from here. And whatever are the challenges in this wall, those who are going to cast the vote, they are not here, they are out there. So when we talk about changing European politics, it's not only here, it's also there. And this is what organizations like mine, ALDA, the European Association for Local Democracy, and also EPD, which represents a broad consortium and partnership of democracy supporters, are aware of. So, and this is what Armin suggests me to talk about, how to make sure that the importance of the European Parliament elections in the past and now are also perceived out there. The challenges and the importance of voting and expressing their vision and their proposal. I think that the next European Parliament elections will be extremely important and extremely difficult. My message, and I will conclude because I know that I have very little time, is that we need to create citizens interested in deliberation. And what we do in ALDA is to work at the local level, basically one-to-one. And basically in each school, in each local governments, to be able to build what is our European citizenship. And this is multifaceted. And this is also what EPD somehow is doing together with us. So democracy is holistic. It tackles freedom of press, it tackles multi-party, it tackles accountability, it also deals with the fair and free elections. So I think that we need to be high in our thoughts and our strategy, so changing the European electoral law, what our MEPs are doing here, and changing the rule of the game to make it more functional. This is what we want. But on the other hand, we don't have to be afraid to work in the micro. So in our communities, in our municipalities, in our civil society groups, and to make people bring them back to the trust in political affairs.
I think we are focusing, and you are focusing on the right elements. We are continuing the work. Sandro Gozzi told me that he thinks the political advertisement file can be concluded under the Spanish presidency. We are also putting pressure to open negotiations on our electoral law. We have made progress also on these directives on mobile citizens. And we are also, I think, going to conclude under the Spanish presidency the file on European political parties and foundations, which is also very, very important. And there are also sometimes inconsistencies because the regulation doesn't separate ordinary financing from electoral financing. So we are making progress, but we have many more things to do. So we need you to continue feeding us the right and the good ideas.
Thank you, Dominic. You summarized it nicely up, and we feel there are a lot of questions to be raised and to be followed up by us as well. And we from Election-Watch.EU, we are doing and contributing this comparative research throughout the EU member states, and we are also advocating for electoral reforms, and will be working hand in hand with you and the European Parliament on that ahead of the European Parliament elections. Now, I ask Ken Godfrey, he is the Executive Director of the European Partnership for Democracy, to sum up the key points of today's discussion, and then I think we can go for coffee and debate in a more informal way with all of us.
Thanks very much, Armin. I think MEP Ruiz de Vesa just summarized things very well, but let me just add a couple of things. So just to be very quick, we've mentioned a number of risks and a number of opportunities. And we've also mentioned that there's a lot of things that are being done. In the context of the risks, we mentioned disinformation. We mentioned the gaps between national law and European law, very significant ones. We mentioned legal barriers within member states. So, for example, persons with disabilities, but also to actually observe elections for citizen observers or international observers. We also mentioned harassment, so physical barriers to certain underrepresented groups and their ability to vote and contribute to elections. And finally, it wasn't mentioned for most of the discussion, but it was mentioned at the very end. And I think it's a very key point. Do people care enough? And I think that that's a really important thing at European level. And it gets to what Antonella was saying about engaging people outside of the elections. They need to care enough to want to vote and to have their voice beyond voting for people who reject the European idea in general. And when it comes to opportunities, I'll just mention two. One is harmonization. We mentioned political advertising. We mentioned on European political parties and foundations, mentioned on election observation. And the second is engagement. So getting people engaged, young people, mobile citizens. We mentioned voting age. We mentioned civil society organizations. We also mentioned media actors being engaged. And all of those will need to be supported, mobilized in order for turnout to hopefully increase again, and particularly increase in those countries that Michael mentioned where turnout was still below 30%. So I'll leave it there. Thank you very much.